And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Pumpkin Copter cast. I am joined today by David Stanley, creator and worker honor of the soon-to-be released sometime this year game Skelattack.
That's right. So excited, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Sure.
So we'll go on to the first question. Who you are and what you do in the context of this game.
All right. I'm David Stanley. I'm the creator and lead developer on Skelattack. I have a background in art and animation. Those things came first, and later on, I picked up programming. And Skelattack was my practice project to see if I could make a game by myself. So later on, I was able to get support by a publisher, Yakuza, and they actually brought me and my game in-house. And now there are four of us working on it together. We've got another programmer helping me on the back end polish some things. But yeah, I'm just a storytelling nerd, and I love cartoons and fun experiences, and hopefully that's what Skelettack is going to be.
Okay, so and how did video games become a part of your life?
They were forced upon me cruelly by my parents. Yeah, so it was, let's say it was about 1990. I was in kindergarten. I came home from school one day, and there was an NES waiting in the bedroom, and I don't even remember what my reaction was, or if I even really knew what games were. But yeah, my dad more for himself than for me. But so Super Mario Brothers, Tetris, Duck Hunt. I fell in love with these insane games. Because each one was like so drastically different, and I had no idea how you pop in a little plastic square into a machine and it makes all these images and colors and sounds appear. It was mind blowing, and I was hooked from that moment. And I think a lot of people share that same story, just having the NES and Super Mario and just falling in love with what Nintendo was doing.
Yep.
And I've been in love with Nintendo ever since, and gaming in general.
Yep. I had a similar. I'd always grow up watching my brother play Mega Man X and the SNES
Oh yeah,
back when I was a wee thing,
yeah.
wondering what was going on.
A young lad.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, that was good stuff. Like I was the older brother. I've got a younger one, 5 years younger than me, and yeah, it was always funny. Like I loved having him around and just having these two-player co-op experiences, or making each other really angry on Smash Bros. It's always a good time.
So yeah, onto the meat and potatoes
Yeah.
of this thing I call a podcast. So, what is Skelattack exactly?
Skelettack is kind of a weird underdog story, where a character that you normally don't even give a second thought to is suddenly thrust into the spotlight of this entire game. He's a skeleton, and he lives in a deep, dark, crazy dungeon. You don't really know what's down there, but humans are raiding you, and they're not welcome guests. They kill you and your friends, and they steal all of your treasure, and they destroy your houses and the stuff that you've worked so hard to create. So you just have to fight back against all of these humans and work your way all the way up, from the lowest part of the dungeon all the way to ground level, just getting these thieves out of your house, essentially. And along the way, you meet some really crazy, interesting characters. There's a lot of like quirky humor, and you get to read books that slowly uncover more about the world in which you live, which turns out there is a massive society existing underground, and they don't want to be destroyed. No society really wants to be destroyed, so you just kind of have to fight back. But the gameplay is very reminiscent of Super Mario Brothers, Super Meat Boy, just a lot of tight platforming, wall jumps, sword play, and some light magic using.
Okay, and as you just mentioned, like, what gave you the idea to make just a regular old dungeon skeleton the protagonist?
That's an interesting story. In my day job, I work on mobile apps, and yeah, I would do art and animation for games, little phone games. And so my partner that I work with, I would always like set up these very, very simple little demos to show off to him to be like, hey, maybe this can be the next game we work on. And he has final say on everything. So one day I was really bored and I was just like, well, you know what we haven't done? It would be cool to make like a really simple little platforming game on the phone. So I didn't want it to just be like a white square jumping around. So I drew the first thing that came to mind, and it was this short, kind of chubby little skeleton. And I tossed it in, and I made the little demo, and I sent it to him. And we actually ended up not making that game. We had some other stuff on the back burner that we wanted to make instead. So I was cool with that. Anyway, time goes by, and as I'm slowly transitioning into learning how to program for myself and wanting to make my own game, I was like thinking back to my old folders and things I had made. I was like, is there anything sitting around that I can just kind of toss into this new game that I'm making and just see where it goes? And I remembered that old skeleton who I thought was kind of cute. So I tossed him in the game, and I was just like, man, I really like this. Okay, now the question is, if I keep him in the game, why is he a skeleton running around? Like why is he even alive? What's his story? So I took some time and thought about it once I had my general platforming programming set up and everything was running well enough. And I created a story for what this skeleton is. And that is the story that we see today. The dungeon-dwelling skeleton who has to defend his home. It was kind of a mistake. I just tossed him in as like a placeholder asset, and I liked him so much that I had to make a game about him. And the rest is history.
Yeah, I guess so. So it saw in one of the latest trailers for the game that it is roguelike, or at least has roguelike bits in it. So what made you want to put roguelike elements into the game?
It's a funny question because when I started the game, I actually didn't really want it to be anything like a roguelike. And to be honest, I didn't even know what a roguelike was when I started working on the game. Some of these terminologies just kind of slipped past me, and then people like the players and fans started tagging the game under this classification, and I was like, maybe they're right. I didn't plan it; it just kind of happened. But I guess when you compare it to the more hardcore roguelikes, it might not really stand up as well because it's pretty forgiving in its gameplay. There's not really any procedural generation in the dungeons, but I just really wanted a fun, challenging dungeon crawling experience that didn't make you want to punch through your computer screen every time you lost a life or lost some progress. I wanted it to be challenging but forgiving at the same time.
Okay.
When I was working a very early version of the game, I did want every room in the dungeon to be procedurally generated, and to be honest, I was kind of I was just kind of really into that. It was the new hot thing at the time, procedurally generated rooms, and I was like, I want to do that. I want to make a game that can just go on forever because it procedurally generates itself for all of time. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, I'm not nearly smart enough to even pull that off. So I just scrapped the idea, and eventually I fell in love with the thought that this dungeon was built by a society with love and care, and I wanted to place every block and every asset by hand, and just have like the best experience that I could, and just everything laid in by a human and not by some code. So that's kind of how that all came about. I think it worked out for the best, though.
Looks like it. So, what games would you say like inspired the tone of the game, where it's like partly serious because it's about the skeleton defending his home, but it's also just skeletons acting like people?
Yeah. So I really enjoyed Earthworm Jim on the Sega Genesis. Was a big one for me. I don't know if you played it, but it was extremely cartoony, very hand animated, full of life, and full of wild humor. The game forced you to look at things with a new perspective. You had like a living earthworm in like a big bodysuit running around doing all this crazy stuff, and it was just so wacky in all the best ways. Like tone wise, I wanted some of that, but maybe not as wacky as Earthworm Jim. I definitely wanted it to be funny and memorable, and to have a lot of life visually. And then for gameplay style, like I mentioned earlier, Super Mario Brothers and Super Meat Boy were both really great titles, inspiration wise. Just like you see, like how much you can do with not a whole lot of mechanics. Just a character, a ground, and some blocks. And there's like so much that you can do with that, and so many ways that you can continue to challenge the player. Even decades after Mario Brothers was first released, people are still finding new and creative ways to challenge players with just some simple platforming.
Okay, and now we can move on to my favorite question, and the question that all of my guests enjoy answering and are never confused by at all, and anyone who says otherwise is a liar. So, in your opinion, is video games?
All right, this question made me laugh, and then when I was done laughing, I was like, oh crap, I actually got to have an answer for this. Let me think. It's a really good question, man, I gotta say. My answer is, in the right circumstances, video is games. And it sounds so silly to say out loud. And my reason for saying that is, when you watch a murder mystery or some weird movie that you don't have all the pieces to at first, and even by the time the credits roll, you still have to go back and think about things and see how it all fits together. That's like a puzzle game in some ways. It challenges the user, it challenges the viewer, and you kind of get to draw your own conclusions. At the end of it, maybe you feel really good and accomplished, like, oh, so that's what that meant. I totally get it now. Like, I'm so smart. Like, that feels like beating a level, or beating a boss in some cases. So I think in the right circumstances, with the right story and script, I think video is games. I remember when I was young, I read a story in a magazine about something that this one movie tried when it went to theater. I think it was before my time. I don't even remember what the movie was, but they had it set up in the theater. We had this like little controller with two buttons on it or so, and there would be points in the movie where it would pause and you would get to like choose two options, or one of two options, about what would happen next. And based on how many votes it got from everyone sitting in the theater, like the next scene would play out according to your votes. So that was a really interesting thing that I remember reading about, where someone actually tried to make a movie into a sort of game. And I wish that they had more like that. I would love to go to the theater more often than I do, if they had stuff like that. But yes, good question. Video is games. It's official.
You heard it here first.
Yes.
So, I know we're a bit of a ways off Skelattack being ready to be for general consumption, but
Yeah.
considering where the game is now, what would you say is your favorite gameplay mechanics currently implemented in it?
Hmm. Um, I I really like the I really like how much you die and the respawn system. It was something that I put a lot of thought into, and it was there from the very earliest versions of the game where you die, but you respawn so quickly. It never really takes you out of the game, and people really enjoyed it. People hate looking at loading screens, and I also liked that it actually fit in with the story. These infinite retries because you're dead and you live in an enchanted magical dungeon. Um, so that's probably my favorite mechanic, and I think a close second is when Ember picks you up by the top of your head and flies with you. At PAX South, like when you and I met, people really liked that because you go through a few of the rooms and you're just like, you think you know what the game is, and then you get to this one area and Ember just grabs onto you and flies you across this impossibly wide gap that you wouldn't have been able to cross otherwise. It was a really fun thing for me to be able to implement, and it seemed like the players really enjoyed it too. So it's a close second for me.
I was going to say that Ember the bat just picks you up and flies you over. That was my favorite because
Nice.
because the wonders of animation nowadays, they're able to convey just. I'm willing to bet Scully, the skeleton you play as in the game, isn't exactly hollow bones, and his
Yeah.
bat friend's having a tough time of it, and just again, just one of my favorite things in animation is being able to give facial features to things that don't have a traditional face. Like Scully is able to like smile and curl his non-existent eyelids to make a content face, and I'm just like
Right.
that's that's comedy right there.
Man, dude, I really appreciate that you picked up on that because, as an artist, it's something that like I put a lot of thought to, and you're never sure when you put out a game or a demo if people are even going to notice stuff like that. But because you do, it makes it worth it to me. Like she's like her cheeks are all red, and she's like struggling to carry this full skeleton. And it shouldn't even be possible. And I remember being a kid reading Spider-Man comics
Mm-hmm.
and noticing how like Spider-Man is pretty comical, and he's always got his mask on, and they found ways to convey emotions through the mask. It didn't make complete sense if you think about it like in the real world, but like his giant spider eyes would like squint down if he was like thinking about something, or they'd get really big and crazy if he was startled by something. And it was something that I always remembered, like you don't have to have a lower jaw or eyebrows or a nose with flaring nostrils. Like you can do so much with just the eyes alone, and that's what I wanted to make sure I did with Scully, because he's the star of the game, and you're going to spend so many hours looking at him while you play. Like I wanted him and Ember to be as expressive as possible, even with their lack of features.
So I noticed on the Skelattack's website that the intended platforms to launch on it are Steam, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. And
Yeah.
I mean, as for why Steam's obvious, despite the fact that it seems like Steam is
Yeah.
just a mess of things at times. It is
Yeah, for sure.
the biggest digital platform to release a product on, but you know, So that's understandable, but
Right.
if why Xbox and Nintendo Switch is like the console versions.
Yeah, sure. So for the Xbox market, it's from what I've heard, their indie market isn't quite as saturated as Sony's at the moment. I could be wrong on that, but that was one of the big reasons why we went with Xbox first. And they got back to us fairly quickly, and they were like, "Yeah, let's get Skelattack up here." Um, and Nintendo Switch, man, that's just the dream right there. That's a dream like 28 years in the making for me. Um, when I was 5, I was like, I want my game on the Nintendo Switch. I don't even know what that is yet, but I want my game up there. Um, Nintendo just has this way of presenting ideas that is just always innovative, but always charming and super memorable. And that's something I really wanted to be a part of. Um, Making it happen was not the easiest thing because, people would come up to me like at PAX or online and be like, I want Skelettack on the Switch. I want it. And I was like, me too, but I can't do it yet. I made the game in Game Maker, and as we all knew, Game Maker had console exports, but nothing for Nintendo until this year. So it finally got announced that Nintendo was going to work with Game Maker and make an export module so that we can put our games on the Nintendo Switch, and that was all it took. Because as a project, as a game, Skelettack had previously been accepted by Nintendo. It was just a matter of, are you guys going to release an export module, or am I going to have to rebuild my entire game in Unity, which I really don't want to do, or pay somebody to port it to Unity, which I really don't want to do because I'm broke all the time. So yeah, a lot of my friends and fans of the game were just like, this game needs to be on the Switch. It looks like a Nintendo game to me. Please do it. And with just a little bit of time, we were able to say yes, we're going to do it. But having said all that, we're not avoiding Sony. I would very much like to have the game on PS4. That's the console that I own. I don't have a Switch yet or an Xbox One. Um, but yeah, we're going to release on Steam, Xbox One, and Switch, and then we're going to see how the game does. If it doesn't flop and actually seems to be like picking up lots of players, then we'll certainly be able to bring it over to PS4 as well. But there's money involved with like dev kits and whatnot, and the whole certification process. So it would just be, let's see if we can justify doing it after the release. But I'm definitely buying a Switch so that I can play Skelettack on it.
I mean, yeah, for me the Switch has like put games on my radar that I never really would have thought about playing otherwise. Just because
Yeah.
the fact that it's both a handheld and a console at the same time is just
God.
something I still can't get over.
Yeah.
I remember when like it was announced that the 2016 version of Doom was coming out, and like having
Yeah.
that on a
I was
Nintendo
like, whoa, a
console.
Switch? I was like, I never thought Doom and Nintendo would be mentioned in the same sentence. But the fact that they made it happen was super cool. I still haven't played Doom 2016. So I don't know. I don't know if you're the same way, but I love my 3DS so much because it is. I mean, I can play it under my blanket at night when I should be going to sleep instead. It just like, I don't know, man. Something about the fact that I don't have to be sitting in front of a TV all the time when I play it, that I could take it pretty much anywhere. Um, it brings me back to my childhood in a way. Like, I remember when I first got the worm light attachment for my Game Boy, so that I could finally have like light that shines on the screen, so I didn't have to sit under a lamp all the time. I would like lay in bed at night and play it, and I'd hear my parents coming down the hall, and I'd like unplug it and pretend I was asleep. Like, I just really enjoy how cozy it is being able to play wherever you want to play. So I'm super excited to get a Switch. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to happen, but I can't wait.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to hear from me for a couple of days once I get it.
I mean, I'm the same way with my 3DS, just because it's introduced me to like a whole bunch of series. I mean, without it, I wouldn't become like the huge rabid fan of Pokemon that I am, or I never would have played the Phoenix Wright or the Professor Layton games.
Yeah, I still want to get my first Professor Layton game. Like, they rarely go down in price, from what I've seen. But I love a good puzzler.
I believe the original trilogy are fairly cheap. It's when it moves to the 3DS that it kind of jumps in price a bit.
Understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fell in love with Monster Hunter thanks to the 3DS. I had the first Monster Hunter on my PSP back in the day, but I really had no idea what I was doing with that game. Like the crafting and how much strategy needed to go into the monster hunts. I don't know, I didn't really get the most out of it. And then I bought Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate on the 3DS. I was like, I gotta give this game another try. And I fell in love with it, man. And now I'm back. Now I'm hunting again.
I had the same experience when I'm back in the ancient year of 2012 when Pokemon X and Y came out, and
oh yeah,
there's a big deal. Just what drew me in was the fact that like all of the 600 plus Pokemon at that point had a fully rendered 3D model with
they were beautiful.
Yep, and that was the first Pokemon game I ever actually beat.
Oh, really?
And I remember when I played through it a second time, and this is just a small diversion, is that one of my favorite Pokemon, Shedinja, in order to get it, you have to catch a Nincada, and in Pokemon X, that only occurs in like one part of one route of the game.
Oh,
so
wow.
I was searching there for like 20 minutes, and then having to level up the Nincada to about 20, which is when it evolves. And just a brief tangent into Pokemon for those of you who don't know. Like, Nincada is the only Pokemon who, like, evolves the way it does, is that when it evolves into, like, the scary bug thing, Ninjask, and if you have an extra Pokeball and an empty slot in your party, you also get a Shedinja, which is basically, like, a cicada skin.
Wow, I didn't even know about that, dude.
And what drew me into it is, after seeing it in that one episode of the Pokemon anime, is that Shedinja is, unless it is a fire, flying, rock, dark, or ghost type attack, Shedinja cannot be harmed by any of the other types. So,
wow.
There are certain things to look about. If you play your cards right, it can be invincible. And just to close this out, one time I was doing an online fight with someone, and they brought out a Palkia, which is one of the legendaries from the Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum generation. Okay. And since it was like a combination of I have no idea its typing, but like Dragon and Psychic, it didn't have a single attack that could touch Shedinja, so even its like strongest legendary exclusive attacks couldn't scratch it, and I was able to take down one of the legendary Pokemons with what is essentially a shed skin of a bug.
That's insane, man. What a strategy. You're just untouchable.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing about the Pokemon series as well. Like, the strategy continues to evolve. And I only beat X a couple of weeks ago. I played it and got pretty much to the end, and then I put it down because I just was like, I had a really overpowered team of mostly Generation 1 Pokemon, and along with the experience boost that I got because they were traded Pokemon from my brother, I also had XP share turn on, and so I was like unstoppable, and I was just breezing through the game. I had so much money, and I actually wasn't really paying much attention to the story, and I got almost to the Elite Four, and I was just like, I don't even know like what I'm fighting for, like what's happening in this world. I haven't even been paying attention. I've just been beating the crap out of everybody. So I put it down, and then months later I came back and just beat the Elite Four just so I could say I did it, and I felt bad about myself. Like I want to play the game again someday, or maybe even Sun or Moon, and just turn off experience share and catch some actually like new wild Pokemon that I've never seen before, and like immerse myself in the world a little bit better. Because I was just like, all right, I need my Charizard, I need my Pikachu, gotta have my Butterfree. I was just like covering up the last like 15 years of Pokemon advancements. I was just like, give me my old stuff, that's all I need. And it wasn't really the best way for me to play that game, as it turns out. It was effective, but not the most fun experience. So I'm looking forward to going back to it once I let some time pass and play it the right way.
Okay. And to bring it back on task for the final question on the docket.
I thought I was here to talk about Pokemon, but
someday. Let's see. So, as someone who maybe sometime in the future will get into game design in one way, shape, or form, but as of right now knows literally nothing about it, when the finished game is eventually released, like, what will have been roughly its total time and like development from like an idea to the finished product?
Yeah, from idea to finished released game, 3 years.
Oh.
Like I'll say 3 and maybe like a month or 2 on top of that. Yeah, so back in 2015, I started with just the seed of an idea, and yeah, the game we're shooting for fall release later this year, so it'd be like almost 3 years exactly. Which I never thought I would devote that much time to this game, honestly. I remember when I had a pretty solid demo built, and like the game looked good enough. I remember friends would ask me like, "Oh, when is it gonna be out?" And I was like, "Oh man, like I should be done with it in 2016." And then in 2016, I was just like, if I'm not finished with this game in 2017, there's a big problem. And then like all this stuff happened, and got publisher support with Yakuza, and we started taking it to PAX South and PAX East, and meeting all these great people and having all these new big ideas for the game. We were just like, all right, we're not going to hit the release that we thought we were going to. We need to take a little bit more time. So yeah, it's quite a time investment, but I love this game, and the Yakuza guys do as well, and it's a pleasure to work on it, honestly. But I don't want it to be 4 years. I think 3 is enough for a fun little platformer, honestly.
Okay then, and that brings us to the end of this particular episode of the Pumpkin Copter Cast. I would like to thank David Stanley for agreeing to this in the first place.
Dude, absolutely. Always happy to chat.
And this is not sponsored by this game, but Skelattack, you heard it, as he just said, sometime in the fall of this year to Steam, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. Yeah.
That's right.
And If you liked what you heard today, be sure to like, rate, comment, subscribe, press that bell icon because, adding extra steps is always fun. On those rare occasions I say anything worth listening to, you can follow me on the Twitters at tgorman83 and, follow Skelattack at Skelattack and
Yeah, simple
follow
enough.
David Stanley on the Twitters too.
Please do. I like to post pretty drawings, or at least I think they're pretty. Hey man, thanks so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
You're welcome, and this has been the Pumpkin Copter Cast, a good old podcast about video games, and we will see you next time.
Bye.